Hey everyone, it is late at night and I'm Norman. So Bulova, Accutron, which I believe is owned by Citizen now, has done it. They've reissued the Spaceview with their 314. They've done that in the past, but this time they actually look like Spaceviews. And they have tuning fork movements. So let us begin. The new hand-assembled Accutron Caliber Y230 is accurate to within 2 seconds per day, vibrating at 360 Hz to create the tuning fork signature F-sharp hum and smooth sweeping second hand. Providing an unobstructed view of the movement, a domed sapphire crystal sits over the open dial, which features a silver-toned chapter ring with Luminova hour markers and a matching handset. The movement is completed with modern materials such as silicone and Elinvar for improved efficiency and durability. Refined details include anglage and pearlage, with Côte de Genève and frosted finishings are seen through the sapphire crystal. Experience an icon of watchmaking history, made modern with the Accutron Spaceview 314. Accutron's new Caliber 314 tuning fork movement is nearly identical to the original. Since many parts of the movement are so delicate, the entire process must be done by hand. And the description of the chapter ring actually applies to the more affordable-ish pieces in this line. There's a yellow gold variant that's modeled after the earlier Spaceviews that didn't have a chapter ring and had all the hour markers painted on the inside of the crystal. And I am far from a Spaceview connoisseur. I didn't really realize that the chapter ring pieces didn't have all the markers on the crystal. So when I was looking at these, I saw the gold one and almost scripted it out for this video as being the one that actually looks like a Spaceview. But that isn't true. Apparently when they started adding chapter rings in later models, they took off all the hour markers and just had branding on the crystal. The history of the Spaceview. The U.S. Elgin Watch Company unveiled the first electrical watch, the Elgin Grade 725, in 1952. People at the time were looking for something more accurate than mechanical watches, and the electric watch invention created a phenomenon that lasted from that moment until the commercial success of quartz watches began in 1969. Earlier in 1950, American company Bulova Watch Company decided they wanted to be a part of the wave they knew was coming, so they sought and then hired Swiss inventor Max Hensel to help realize their dream. Hensel started his career as an engineer, working in research and development at the Federal Polytechnic of Zurich, Switzerland, the Institute of Technical Physics. He eventually replaced the balance with a tuning fork to further improve performance. The tuning fork was asymmetrical in shape and had a small metallic piece made of two parallel arms, which used a microtransistor that created electrical impulses in order to activate the two coils. One of these coils had a measuring capacity which determines the amount and timing of the current pulse, which typically oscillated at 360 Hz. That was a higher frequency than that of a traditional balance, with a maximum deviation value of only 2 seconds per day. The copper wires of the coils were as thin as human hair and measured almost 200 meters in length. Bulova came up with a battery that made the tuning fork vibrate. The pulse obtained divided each second into 100 equal parts, and the control of the amplitude allowed the extreme precision. The vibrations of the tuning fork were impossible to see, but give off a distinct humming sound, when working. The mechanism was very small compared to a conventional watch mechanism at that time and was virtually invisible. In 1959, William O. Bennett, an American engineer working for Bulova, developed the caliber 214, the first ever tuning fork movement. The 214 was the first wristwatch to employ a transistor. It lacked a hand-setting crown on the side of the watch. It made a strange humming sound, and it was very accurate. The tuning fork had a micro rotor connected to the small side. At the end of 1959, in anticipation of the launch of a revolutionary new line of watches called Accutron, Bulova engineers and craftsmen created a tooling that reverse-printed white dial markings on new Accutron crystals. The printed crystals carried all the information that would normally be found on an Accutron dial. That allowed Bulova to remove the dial from models of the new watches and install a printed crystal, thus exposing the tuning fork and the green-colored circuitry inside. Because ordinary plated hands didn't provide enough contrast against the movement to be easily seen from a distance, Bulova used white painted luminous hands as replacements. The converted watches were only intended to be used as sales aids in order to showcase the revolutionary Accutron tuning fork movement. For internal reference, the new movement's caliber was designated as the 214. Perhaps because of its uniqueness, potential customers who thought that the watch in the jeweler's window was a standard model started asking to buy one. Dealers who didn't want to lose a sale were happy to sell the display model, and the strangely attractive watch started selling like hotcakes. Soon, due to popular demand, dealers everywhere clamored for quantities of the new bestseller. In 1961, Bulova scrambled to keep up with the demand for the expensive new toys, and they were hard-pressed to come up with enough of the 14-karat gold cases. The marketing people at Bulova soon realized that they had a hot commodity on their hands. In response, Bulova started selling pre-converted watches, and it wasn't long before several new models were born. Whereas the first Spaceview crystal was created to replace a dial, the new Spaceviews would have a built-in metal minute scale, or chapter ring, and the crystal would be imprinted with only the Accutron name and tuning fork logo. As for the specifications on the reissued Spaceview 314, the case size is 39 millimeters, the case height is 13.4 millimeters, the crystal is sapphire. The water resistance is only listed as splash resistant. So maybe 30, 50 meters, somewhere around there. The movement inside these is the Y230 tuning fork movement. And these have 3 different prices attached to them. The pieces that have the chapter ring inside of them retail for just under $6,000. There's one with a salmon-colored minute track inside of it, and those retail for $6,200. And then the yellow gold one that's modeled after earlier variants of the Spaceview retails for around $31,000. And I believe its case is slightly smaller. So what are my thoughts on these? I feel like they did a much better job of capturing the soul of the Spaceview than they've done in their previous modern Spaceview designs. I mean, those pieces had very innovative movements in them, so in that regard, they were very Spaceview-like, but other than the green hue on the dials, I feel like they didn't have the Spaceview soul at all, and they put them in very large cases. These actually look like Spaceviews, and they have tuning fork movements in them. The case size is much better at sub 40. However, Accutron has been doing amazing and bold things with their legacy line, putting out contemporary pieces at actual vintage proportions. I feel like a legacy line Spaceview would be kind of cool. Maybe a little bit larger than the original Spaceviews, but close to it would be kind of cool. Just as an option. It would be cool to see the earlier design in a non-yellow gold piece as well, at a more attainable price-ish. Because I love those hour markers on the crystal. That's one of my favorite aspects of the Spaceview that I own, because I have one that doesn't have the minute track in it, and those are actually my favorite models, the earlier ones. They decided not to go with the novel crown that the originals had, so these have a crown at 4 o'clock. And the old ones are kind of tough to use, so I'm okay with that. You have my permission. And yes, I just confirmed the yellow gold one has a 37mm case. And I have to say that the chapter rings that they put in the more attainable models are really nice. Those hour markers with loom in them and just the design of those are great. I mean, look at those. I think with these, the roughest part that I have is just the pricing. It would be cool if, like Tech used to do, if these came out hot like this and then after a while settled down and became affordable. Watches should be like old school computers where everything just gets cheaper as time goes on. But it's kind of sad seeing pieces that are niche popular. And it's sad because I'm a niche fan of two different pieces. I mean, I own the originals of each, but for example, the pole router, you can get originals for reasonable prices. They're not cheap, but last time I looked at them, you could purchase them for around $1,500, $2,000. Similar prices to some of the vintage Omegas that are out there. And Spaceviews are even more attainable. And it's just sad that fans of these original pieces probably can't afford the reissued ones, the contemporary ones. And these are the diehard fans. I would absolutely love to see a contemporary pole router in person, a contemporary 314 in person, but at $6,000 or $30,000, I would probably go for something else after all that hard-earned saving. I totally get it. I feel like the pole router specifically would be very at home in luxury prices. It's just such an elegant, classy design. However, I feel like the Spaceview is kind of a different beast. To me, the Spaceview would be at home at stupid luxury prices, kind of like all the weird Jacob & Co. type pieces and just the novelty designs that are up there in the way expensive price ranges. And I feel like it would also be at home in an attainable mid-tier, like they're doing with their Legacy lineup, at around $1,000 to $1,500. That's what I would pay for one of these contemporary Spaceviews, or understand it if they're way up there in crazy rich tiers. But in my opinion, I feel like the $6,000 range is kind of a rough one for a design like this. So maybe the yellow gold will do very well at $30,000, but yeah. At any rate, it's super exciting to see Accutron doing this and some of the other stuff that they're doing. I'm so happy that they've actually reproduced the tuning fork movement. Maybe we'll see that come up in some other designs in time, and maybe some of those will be a little bit more attainable. Or not. Probably not. Yeah, they definitely won't. But there you have it. Thanks for watching.